Okay, just a quick video today as I farewell 2019 and gear up for 2020. So far on this channel I've looked at games from the distant past, and then with my last video I looked at games from the last decade. This time I'm going even more modern, as today I'm going to be looking at a game from the future. That's right, I've got my hands on a time machine. And let me just say, the alien invasion of 2025 may seem like the apocalypse at first, but it turns out that being in an exhibit in an alien zoo is a career with remarkable job security and a pretty attractive benefits package. In the meantime though, let's take a look at Hellbound, a game that isn't even out yet. But there is a demo available on Steam, as well as a survival mode. And I'm not straying too far from my retro roots with this one, as Hellbound is a first-person shooter unashamedly and openly inspired by games from the 90s. There's actually been a bit of a renaissance with 90s shooters lately. There was Ion Fury, which I loved. And a Medieval, which I liked but thought was a little overrated. And there was Dusk, which I haven't played yet. And those are just some of the bigger and better known retro-inspired titles that have come out recently. There are plenty more around, and plenty still to come. In fact, I've been half-heartedly working on one myself, but now I'm not sure if the market's too saturated to make it commercially viable, or if the market's flourishing and now's a good time to get on the bandwagon. But that's me speaking as a wannabe developer. As a consumer, I don't think you can have too many 90s style FPSs kicking around. Because hey, the 90s was when we got Doom, which remains my favourite game of all time. And if a new game claims to be inspired by the granddaddy of all FPSs, then I'm going to be interested. Hellbound wears its inspirations very much on its sleeve, or at least on its logo. This isn't exactly like the iconic Doom logo and typeface, but it's reminiscent of it to say the least. And this is hardly the first game with a logo that's a fond callback to it. And then there's this disclaimer. Yep, they're making no secret of where their loyalties lie, and that's fine by me. Now, I actually played the survival mode first, before I knew there was actually a proper single-player demo as well. I'm not usually that interested in survival modes like this, but for a game that plucks so tenderly at my Doom-loving heartstrings, I was willing to make an exception. And I'm glad I did. Within a minute or so, I knew I was going to like this game, but it's tough to say why. The survival mode itself does nothing special or particularly interesting. It's exactly what you might expect, a large, roughly circular arena, enemies spawning at regular intervals in ever-increasing numbers, health and ammo pickups scattered around the place. And the weapons are fairly run-of-the-mill too. There's a variant of a rifle, a shotgun, a machine gun, a rocket launcher, and a couple of melee weapons, namely your fists and a giant club. None of these weapons do anything unexpected. Instead, they do everything you would expect and hope for from a game like this. The rifle is fast-firing, accurate over long distance, and feels impactful enough to be more than just a last-ditch fallback. The machine gun is basically the same, only even faster and more impactful. And the rocket launcher has just the right damage, explosion radius and speed of its projectiles to be both satisfying and powerful. The melee weapons are, well, if you're using a melee weapon in a game like this, it's usually because you're out of ammo, which is a sad time. But sure, you can punch enemies or whack them with a big stick if you feel like it, or if you have to. You might notice I skipped the shotgun. A better man than me once said that if the shotgun in your first-person shooter is bad, you might as well start again. Fortunately, the developers of Hellbound aren't going to be hitting the delete button on their work just yet, because the shotgun is brilliant. It's brutal, it's visceral, and most importantly, it gives you a good reason to get right up in the faces of the enemies and blast them into oblivion. It's a triple barrel model, which is ludicrous enough to be amusing, but not so over the top it's just ridiculous. You can shoot one barrel at a time, or all three, with the full 3-barrel shot taking longer to reload and, obviously, using more ammo. Both options are valid depending on the situation. Speaking of reloading, like most 90s inspired shooters, Hellbound has no reload button. You can just keep your finger on the trigger until your ammo is depleted, and only with the shotgun will you need to factor in the reload time. Anyway, the survival mode is cool and gives you a nice slice of gameplay, but for me at least, my number one priority in games like this is the main campaign, and seeing what devious challenges and delightfully devilish tricks and traps the level designers have created for our delectation. There's only one solitary level in the demo, and it's not particularly large, but I would describe it as very promising. The one thing that I consider to be the hallmark of 90s game design philosophy, and the one thing that I wish modern game designers would do more often, is that the levels are designed to be like a game and not like a slice of reality. Even Doom 2016, an excellent game in many ways, lost something in my opinion when it tried to recreate somewhat realistic moon bases and communication stations and so on. This is why I still prefer user-made WODs for old school Doom. With such old technology, it's impossible to render realistic environments except in the crudest ways, so the level designers don't bother, instead focusing on creating an environment that's simply fun to explore and challenging to navigate. And Hellbound's one level does this well. There are essentially three main areas: a rocky organic cave section, an open outdoor area, and a large dome-like structure. They flow together nicely and provide reasons to explore while also guiding the player in a logical way towards the ultimate goal. There are three secrets, one of which I found immediately, one that took a while, and one that eludes me still. I could look it up online, but I kind of want to figure it out myself. It's not a particularly sophisticated level, but it is an excellent starting point and a very encouraging sign of what the completed game may be like. Okay, time to go through the good, the bad, and the questionable. The good. The feel of the weapons and the character movement are great. The player character is fast and relatively agile. I'm not personally a fan of FPSs that require large amounts of jumping, but Hellbound has a movement system that actually makes me not hate it. There's not too much jumping required in the one level demo, but I'd say there's just the right amount to add a bit of variety to the gameplay. And more importantly, of course, the nimbleness of the player character allows you to circle strafe like a madman, duck in to unleash a blast from all three barrels of the shotgun, and then duck out again before your entrails get smeared all over the walls. I've already talked about the level design, and although it's tough to judge based on one level, if the full game consisted mostly of levels like this, I'd be happy. Visually the game looks good. The whole hellscape aesthetic isn't particularly original, but it's a tried and tested formula that works just fine. The bad. I'm not sure I can point to anything that I would say is bad as such. There isn't much variety in the enemies, but this is just a demo, and you don't want to reveal all your enemies right away. It was another one of the things Doom did brilliantly, introducing you to new and terrifying monsters as you delve deeper into the game. Will Hellbound be able to do something similar? It's impossible to tell at the moment, but I sure hope so. Performance has been a bit of an issue for me, but this is something else that I can't necessarily complain about. My PC is decent, but it's undeniably aging. The thing is though, for a game like this, performance really matters, not just because you need a high frame rate for such fast-paced action, but also because it's the sort of game that greatly benefits from having as many enemies and moving parts on screen as possible, at least in my opinion. This is another reason why I still play Doom. Hundreds of enemies each shooting countless fireballs at you is something it can handle with ease. I'm fully aware, of course, that it's not realistic to expect a modern, fully 3D engine with fancy lighting and particle effects and so on to be able to handle so many distinct entities. But this is a rare case where I'd take quantity over quality. And I've done a fair bit of work myself with Unreal Engine 4, the game engine Hellbound uses, so I know it's not necessarily easy to optimise performance. The questionable. These are the things that purely come down to opinion. I find this warning somewhat concerning. As I'll never tire of pointing out, I am pretty terrible at games. Challenge is not something I require from the games I play, and although I'm not totally adverse to challenge so long as the game is good enough to keep me coming back, it's more likely to put me off than it is to hook me in. And the thing is, in my memory, 90s shooters weren't hard, nor were they easy. They were both, because they gave you a choice. The way I played Doom and its sequels and user-made WODs, and I'm wondering just how many times I can mention Doom in a video that isn't actually about it at all, meant that it was essentially two games in one. First I played through on easy, or I'm Too Young to Die, and I'd enjoy exploring the levels, hunting down secrets, and appreciating the level design while indulging in the power fantasy of blowing demons into small chunks. Then I'd play through on ultra-violence, this time focusing on the challenge of not being blown into small chunks myself. Furthermore, if things were getting really tough, you could save your game every 5 seconds and reload if you took too much damage. Hellbound doesn't have difficulty settings, and it doesn't have saving. Of course, this is just a demo, maybe those things are planned, but the fact they have a warning suggesting some people may find the game too hard suggests otherwise. In truth, this demo level isn't too tough. I died on my first attempt, but after that I learned to be a bit more careful. And that in itself is also kind of a concern. I don't necessarily want to play a game like this carefully, I want to go in all guns blazing. But of course, if they make the game easy enough to facilitate the power fantasies of doddering old men like me, the game will be nowhere near challenging enough for people with actual skill. That's why I see selectable difficulty settings as a win-win. The only people who lose out in that scenario are people who, for some baffling reason, care how other people play the game. Maybe add a few hard mode only levels to satisfy the truly hardcore. That's a tactic that's worked well in the past. Okay, time to wrap things up. Basically, Hellbound really appealed to me, and if the final product is just a bigger, better version of the demo, it could turn out to be my favourite retro-style FPS of the modern era, and that includes Doom 2016. Not everyone will share that opinion, of course, but if you have any interest in this type of game at all, there's no reason not to check it out. Anyway, that's it from me for now. I'm looking forward to building this channel over the coming year. My goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers. Will I make it? Judging by current trends, no. But hope springs eternal, and other cliches. Okay, thanks for watching, and until next time, get off my lawn.